Thank you.
I'm going to have Brian come on back. Brian from Ariza Content Solutions, if you could join us again. Brian is going to introduce our case studies from customers who have successfully traversed their DITA migrations.
Great. Well, thank you, Marianne.
Brian.
And Sabina and Chris, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I just want to reiterate, Chris's offer to do a deep dive demo for any of you, and even after you have that demo and sort of understand the nuances of Harmonizer, Chris will be more than happy to run a small set of your content through maybe 200 or 300 pages to see how Harmonizer can aid you in the context of your content. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Shannon McCue, who's the Manager of Technical Communication at Aristocrat. Shannon is going to talk about her experiences in a move to structured authoring. Hi, Shannon, how are you today?
Hi there, I'm great. Thank you so much.
Good, good. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you have our attention for the next 45 minutes.
Okay, I was wondering which screen you're seeing of mine. Does it have?
It has the case. It has your opening slide. Yes.
And that's it. That's all that's on there.
Case study and move to structured authoring. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. I am going to talk about all of the steps that a team would need to take in as briefly as I can to get from a grassroots effort of wanting to move to structured authoring and move to DITA to finalizing the implementation. And I am basically a manager of a group of tech writers. I work with a couple other managers of tech writers across a company at Aristocrat. I've been tech writing and editing and all of that stuff a long time. And so I started I didn't start, I took over a community of practice, which is basically a once-a-month meeting where I tried to unite, and we all tried to unite together to figure out some of our common problems across the organization. We're all under different leaders. We are complete and total silos, the technical writing teams at my company. So these are the people who started getting together, and mind you, this was just 50 minutes a month. This wasn't a huge commitment, but it was enough to raise awareness and start talking about doing some dives into some major problems. We had plenty of technical writing teams, had about 20 authors within 3 different organizations in our company, several different authoring tools, a bunch of different styles and standard guides. Some people didn't even have a standards guide. No common templates. Everyone was producing different looking content with different feel. And so we together, without a corporate mandate, decided that we wanted to move to topic-based authoring. We all knew that. We all knew that it was overdue for us, given our documentation set and all the problems that we were all experiencing across the board. And so we started doing our due diligence and researching. I'm going to walk you through how we managed to get from this grassroots effort all the way through to a successful implementation. So we communicated very early and often with all stakeholders so that they could be in the know about what we're trying to do. And we created this phased approach. And you'll see I put little $ next to the ones where we actually had to spend money. But that first phase there of designing is a really heavy research phase. And I'm going to walk you through what that took. So we talked to everybody that could possibly be considered a stakeholder and let them know that we were going to collaborate across departments. We really wanted to do this. Here's why. All of those things. I can't reiterate that enough. So let me go through that first phase with you, the design and development phase, initial research. We identified the problems that we were going to solve. It does not help us to talk to stakeholders if we aren't really tying it back to, well, what is the impact here and what is the problem? What is the compelling need? So we had to define, what does success look like at the highest level? Well, for us, it was happier content users. We found revenue for the company. we would have more efficient authors. And 20 authors out of a company of our size being more efficient really is just a drop in the bucket. So, you know, we really had to focus on the end users and what everyone was going to get out of this company-wide. So not just us, but also customers. And there were plenty more. And we needed to determine why moving to structured authoring was important to the business. Sometimes that can be tricky. You know, you're wanting to present something to the business, and you can see the value in it, and you know that this is the right way to go in your heart of hearts. But sometimes it's hard finding the right research and data and all the words that show the company exactly what it is that's going to benefit and how it's going to benefit them. So who benefits the most? They need to know. We all needed to know. Let me see. Having a hard time here with my page down. Okay, there we go. So much research. Plan for research. So how many employees consume your documentation? How many authors are producing it? What are the tangible benefits for both? What are the intangible benefits? What are those things you can't see, but that you know are there? All of that stuff is all things you will be asked to show, or that we were asked to show for stakeholders. So then you want to translate these benefits into cost savings, because listing a bunch of benefits doesn't really help the company make a good decision on getting to a DITA conversion. So they need to see the revenue. They need to understand how this translates. And I just gave an example here. So if we're going to say to the stakeholders, well, it'll take us less time to update our content. Okay, that's great, but how much less time? How much time in hours per writer? You know, we're not going to pay $100,000 for a solution that saves you, you know, $10 a week or something like that. You know, so we have to really consider how much is it going to save the company. And it was on us to figure these things out. It was on the whole group. We needed to know our list of requirements, and these changed across the multiple groups. So we had a combined list of requirements, and we listed them, and we must have these ones, because each group might have a separate list of must-haves, and then we listed them in nice to have. So all of the structured authoring requirements together. And we were asked for this list multiple times, by the way, so it was really good that we did it. We broke ours out into the author's needs, the customer's needs, and we got those by doing surveys and focus groups, our own knowledge of what we'd seen the customers experience, and then the technical requirements needed from IT. So after all of that research, we chose DITA, and it was our, you know, we chose to do that. We needed the structure. We wanted to stick with the tech writing industry standard of that subset of XML tags. We felt like that was going to work best for us, given that we had gone to workshops just like this, and we had done, went to conferences. You know, we'd brought back research for years, all of us, until we, you know, so we felt pretty strongly and knew that that was the right way to go. And of course, that did narrow down our search for which tools we would be looking at. More research, design and development, that's what we're doing. So we researched the tools, we researched the vendors, and it was a big job. And so, but to get leadership support, we needed some sort of understanding of what this was going to cost and what the timeline would be. How many people do we need to implement it? How long is it going to take to implement? What's it going to be like to maintain? There's a lot of questions, unanswered questions. So we did research. Our three major categories were the professional services to create the information architecture. We did not have an in-house information architecture, but we became information architects, some of us. But at the time, we knew we had to rely on a third party to help us through and create an information architecture, someone like Sabina. We also researched our authoring tools and the CCMSs. We ended up choosing an authoring tool and a separate CCMS instead of the tool being embedded in the CCMS. And then we researched conversion vendors like DCL. So we use the same criteria. So if we had 3 different professional services to score, we scored them all fairly and across the board used the same criteria so that we could get our short list. And sometimes your gut might tell you one thing, but the data says another. So we were very sure to be just in how we gathered all this information. So now, you know, at this point, we really need the stakeholders to kind of greenlight this moving forward. And now we're more than a grassroots effort. We've had enough conversations with people to know, you know, we've moved pretty far into this, and we really need leadership support. We need a sponsor for this type of thing. We won't get much further without it. So we give them everything they need, and we, you know, show it in pictures. Here's, you know, here's a current authoring model that's all messed up, and here's what it'll be like when we get, you know, topic-based authoring and we go to structured authoring and DITA. The things that our stakeholders are most concerned with, and I know this because I've done this on more than just this project, but this is the project that really spelled it out for me. This was my first big initiative with this particular company. The things our stakeholders care about the most is, why is this important? What compelling need are we addressing? What opportunities does this give the company? What does success look like? What are our best tool options? What does it cost? What will it save us? How long does it take to implement? What resources does implementation and maintenance require? You know, if you need 5 IT people dedicated to this full time, that's something that they would need to know. And what future opportunities does this give the company? I guess I repeated that one twice, sorry about that. So the outcomes of this phase, which was a long time in research, and these is just some dummy data I threw up there, but we did actually show a graph that was similar to this. The results at this stage were that we had our analysis done, a lot of analysis done. We had our recommendations, we'd narrowed down our tools and our vendors, and we had a plan of attack, and we were able to show proof of all the data when the stakeholders asked us. So moving into the strategy phase, we united, right? So now the stakeholders are saying, okay, we understand you guys are moving forward. We're going to give you some leeway here until we really see how this is going to play out. So we did a content audit to see the differences between the content across these multiple groups, which was shocking and really brought awareness to how different we were documenting the same types of technical manuals. So we took on immediately some short-term changes. We started doing things that we knew would help us in the future for a DITA transition. And we started getting used to working with new standards. We created an entire standards guide. Now we're working toward different, but the same standards across the board. And we met regularly. You know, outside of our original community of practice, we had to start tracking the status of all these initiatives and getting action items and updating each other with new information. So this content audit was really extensive. I can say though that it helped us when it came to working with DCL later, the content conversion later, and when it came to talking to the third party and setting up our information architecture and all of these things. You know, at first when we started doing this, I wasn't sure how useful some of this information was going to be, but it ended up something that we referred to often during the entire implementation phase. So I won't go through all of these, but just know that doing a thorough audit of your content is definitely recommended, and understanding your differences in layouts and structures across different manual types, it's necessary. And even understanding some of your conventions and the different technical requirements you had. You know, some people were producing online helps and others weren't, and things like that. Some people had different types of image files and the others didn't. I mean, it was really extensive. And this part right here, part 5, identify all of this usage for comparison. That's the one that we felt like, well, we can tackle some of this stuff. We can start doing this right now. We don't need to wait for structured authoring. And in this phase, this is where we spent the money. We had what we called seed money. You know, the company was willing to give us a little bit to create our information architecture and learn about how we would come together with this. And so we hired a consultant. And we all got together, which meant some people flying from India, from Vegas, from Tennessee, you know, all of us needed to get together. And we worked toward a unified content strategy. You know, we had to make a lot of compromises. Everyone made some compromises. And now knowing our IA model really helped us all start moving toward one set of standards. And as a manager, I can say at this stage, I started to see who really had an affinity for the XML architecture and had a good grasp and could understand the information model and how it was going to relate to our future work. So we moved into proving the concept. Now we have leadership support to spend time on the project, so we had to do use cases, and we designed the use cases based on user-reported pain points to measure the value. So the value was extremely clear. I mean, the data was easy to come up with. You know, if it takes someone a bunch of time and looking up lost things and duplicated manuals and things across multiple silos of information, and it was pretty easy for us to show the value to the stakeholders. And then we took all of this architecture information and gave it to the vendors that were going to do proof of concepts for us, so that when we did the proof of concepts, it could try to follow our info architecture as best as it could at that phase. It was just so early in the, we hadn't got a tool, we hadn't got our stuff into XML. I mean, it was just so early. But the outcome of the proof of concepts did help us narrow down our top tool choices. Then we wanted to evaluate the vendors more. So we have to compare, now we have those top lists, we really need to, write requests for proposal and compare those responses, compare the features, you know, must have versus nice to have, compare the outcome of the proof of concept and how we all rated that. Compare the conversion vendors, because we know they're going to come into play pretty quickly as soon as we make a decision on the vendors. And then we scored it, again, fairly and equally, you know, using the same criteria across the board to determine our top vendors. And then once we had that done, we had a mock timeline. You know, this is an example of a timeline, and we would know about how long things would take. This is, again, something stakeholders really need to know. Is this going to be a year-long implementation or a 5-year implementation? So that moved us into the funding phase, which is getting our business case approved. And I can't say this enough. All of that research was worth it. Every single bit of time we had to spend doing all this ended up giving us all of the information we needed to do a thorough business case and all the supporting documentation. And every time someone asked us a question, we were like, yes, we have that. We already looked into that. Yes, we have a document for that. Yes, we know that answer. And if not, we got it. So we got everything we needed to give it to the company, but we were stalled, just waiting on them to approve it, which Sabina had mentioned that too. Sometimes the timing really stinks and you've just got to wait for people, you do all this stuff and you're very excited and you have momentum, and then you kind of have to just sit there and wait for a while. But the interesting part was we didn't get a no. So we were excited, but we didn't get a yes either. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. It was so up in the air. And then all of a sudden, money became available and the executive said, okay, you can do it and you need to do it now. So I just like to reiterate, be prepared, because when they do give you your chance, you need to be able to act fast and take advantage of it, which means you want that implementation timeline put together. You want the all your ducks in a row, all that research. In the implementation phase, this is where we actually move the mountain. It turns out you're gonna need new roles. Like I said earlier, the manager suddenly knows and can tell who has an affinity, right? So you do need an information architect. You do need someone who can lead different portions of the project, a core team of people who will be responsible for the bulk of everything. So in our company, I managed the project, and then we had a core team of leads and a core team of managers, I should say, that are in charge of, are accountable, and then we had project leads, and then some of these roles were new to us, a lead information architect and architecture, and then we created an entire group just for the information architecture. because we don't want just 1 or 2 person to be like super users on this architect stuff. We need everybody to understand it, or at least more people in more locations to understand it. So interestingly enough, now that we've went through the entire implementation, we actually just use the IA group. A group of super users are the ones who make our information model and architecture decisions now by committee. And then we have a standards task force is what we called it. And so these are the people who are meeting regularly to update that style guide and make sure that every little weird thing that we find now across the board, across 20 different authors and their writing, gets addressed somehow and is updated in our style guide. The implementation milestones, it took us a year. So that's 3 to 5 organization charts with all the different leaders and our 20 authors. From publication, from the very beginning all the way through to the rollout, it was a little less than about a year. So these are some of the things that were involved there. Developing all your style sheets and the templates and the constraints and the schema. And, we had that third party who had walked us through our information model and architecture. So we had all that set. And they also walked us through all of these steps. And as a matter of fact, they helped us know what these steps would be because we didn't know. And, every step was new and different to us. And it was, it was a long time. And like Chris said, you're tired at the end of it, but we did it and we got through and we have our content converted and we've got a lot of things into our DITA files and we're using it every day. I just wanted to show you my lessons learned. They always say Bill Gates says content is king. I hope no one else has said this, but my first thought when I created this was if content is king, research is queen, because I cannot say how much research we have to do. And, I don't know that it's only my company that is like that. I think all companies and stakeholders who are being good stewards of their finances are going to really dig deep when it comes to spending money and making sure that tools that you purchase for one part of the company are going to not be obsolete and that it's worth the money. So it helps to find out in advance if your company's process for funding. How do you procure vendors? How do you do RFPs? Who's in charge of this stuff? Who's going to give you your IT requirements? What does it take to submit a business case? You have a committee you have to go through? Where's this business case template at? Does that even exist? There's a lot of things to know about that. Also know that everyone on the team can do some research. This is not all research done by one person. Even the project leads, there's plenty of minor things and other things that people can research and spend time on. Lots of data that you can gather. You can gather. You can even time yourself. How long does it take me to create a chapter? And then look up how long it's going to take to create that same chapter if we are in DITA. Be prepared. The stakeholders at the highest level, they care about those things I mentioned earlier, but they're going to have some questions, about adoption barriers and just things that you may not have considered so much. And you want to be prepared for all of their questions. And for us, the main thing is we have an eye toward a bigger prize, right? We would love an enterprise-wide solution, not a silo of just 3 to 4 of the tech writer teams. It would be great if everyone who is producing content in the entire company was using this type of solution. And so to do that and to spend money on something like this, I can't imagine purchasing any solution right now in this day and age unless it's scalable. So you want to actually do some research on what other needs the company has and how they would fit in. So as an example, we made sure that our information architecture would be scalable, and so are these tools, so that if other departments wanted to join us and become content developers in XML with us, that we could easily include them in our information architecture. everybody needs to know the plan at all times. Everyone needs to understand what their role is. Everyone needs buy-in, you know, to this big, huge mountain that you guys are trying to move together, and everyone can take part. It is not something that just one or two people are going to be working on. So you want everyone to be included in creating the plan and getting it approved. Every time we had a new phase or a new milestone or a new huge action item, we had a kickoff, and every person that would be part of that would be at the kickoff and have the same initial understanding of what the clear objectives were for this particular milestone. And we updated regularly. Every week is long after the implementation now, and we still have that project team every week because it was so beneficial to be able to touch base, that we still touch base and we still go over anything that continuous improvement wise that we need to keep an eye on. Make sure those action items have owners and dates and that you're following up. And if you're a manager or you're someone at the project manager level leading this, you're gonna have to rely on leads at each location or in each team or on your one team to complete these initiatives. Another thing I learned is to set expectations. So the project team, you know, they didn't know it going into it, but we all had to be very flexible. So now I would definitely tell someone, these deadlines are going to change mid-stride. We're going to try the best we can. The action items are going to change. As soon as you find out one thing, you're going to find out 10 more, and now we've got 5 more action items. This is just the nature of a type of project where you're implementing something you've never done before. And so if you've never done it before, it's okay. Just be flexible and be ready to take on tasks that you don't normally do. Be willing to sometimes devote 100% of your time to this initiative, or other people on your team may have to devote 100% of their time, or you might have to do some load balancing with the workload. And then just be helpful. There's going to be people who hate anything new. They hate the whole idea and the concept, and they're not don't want to be trained on it and just kind of refuse. You know, you're going to have to handhold some folks and give them a little more patience and a little more time. And make sure that all those risks, all the issues, everything that comes up that, you know, that is hard, it's going to put this project at risk is transparent. You have to be committed to keep things moving. You know, I hate it. You don't want to be a taskmaster, but at the same time, this type of project will stall if you don't just keep it moving. And I was bound and determined to get this thing done within a year. and I had the support of everyone, all of our entire team to do that. No one wants something like this to go on forever, so you have to keep moving. And sometimes those leads and people on their teams, or even people, you know, are having to ask people for things and get people to do things for them that they do not have authority over, or maybe not even in the same organization structure. So you have to be creative when it comes to getting what you need and leading and delegating without having the authority to do so. But the most important thing was we celebrated. So whenever we hit those milestones, it was worth taking the time out to congratulate everybody. Sometimes we had a little, when back before COVID, you know, we could have a little get together with some snacks or something. It was just really worth celebrating some of the more major points, and otherwise everyone is just really going to be down, you know, because you're also doing your own work too. But I think everyone was just so glad to finally get updated into DITA and to get into structured authoring, and they knew it was going to make their lives easier. So they were motivated, but that doesn't mean that it can't be sometimes just hard and something you got to overcome. So take the time to congratulate people, to thank them, and to celebrate. And that is all I had for you today.
Thanks, Shannon.
Sure.
I love hearing case studies, especially with happy endings.
Great.
And all in all, a year to me sounds sounds amazing. So well done.
Thank
Kudos
you. That
to
was
your
for the
team.
implementation phase. Yeah, all the
Yes,
research was before that, but
understood.
yes, implementation, and you know, and DCL was right up there with us on that. They converted our data and were really good with their quick turnarounds too. So we were grateful.
Well, we do have a question that came in. Do you have a sense of the amount of reuse you actually have, and you know, compared to what you forecast?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, when we did the conversion, and you know, this is not a plug, but Brian worked with us and did a harmonizer report for us from DCL. So we had a very clear picture of our reuse. Right now, though, we're doing exactly what Sabina was going through in that presentation. Everything she said, I was like, oh yes, we're experiencing this now. So we haven't actually implemented reuse to its full extent yet. And so we're still relying on our harmonizer report that we got initially and looking at doing all the things that Sabina said. So yes, we've gotten some things immediately, right? The legal stuff, you know, the headers and footers, having the style sheets across the board took away proprietary notices, you know, things that were just elements that we could use across the board. Those are definitely being reused. Some topics are being reused across multiple manuals, but nothing in a vast reuse strategy sense yet, and we are very close to that. We are researching it right now and implementing it right now, so I'll have more of an idea on that. And
we'll have you back to report on that then at a later date. Thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.